I really planned and took time to prepare for.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, regardless of the time that you're joining in on this session today. Today, we're having another interesting episode of the podcast, and I have a phenomenal guest with me in the studio today. It is Mr. Richard Tusiime from Uganda. And Mr. Richard is a phenomenal young man doing great things, particularly around policy work in agriculture in Africa. And we're going to just be having the conversation around youth at the center, designing inclusive agri-food policies for African future. And so I'm going to read out Mr. Richard's profile so you get to know who this phenomenal guest we have today is. Mr. Richard is a seasoned governance and policy expert with over 8 years of experience in agri-food system, human rights, and biodiversity conservation. He holds a master's in food security from the University of Edinburgh and a bachelor's in ethics and human rights from the Marrakech University. Richard currently leads the We Work Green and Decent Jobs for Youth program at the Trias East Africa, championing dignified employment for young people in the green economy, particularly in renewable energy and green construction. His work is rooted in youth inclusion, policy advocacy, stakeholder management within Uganda. He serves as the African representative on Youth Policy Board of World Food Forum, advancing youth-led policy reforms and leading regional consultation across the continent. He is a policy fellow and he contributes to the global biodiversity discourse, ensuring African youth priorities are at the center. And he was a scholar at the MasterCard Foundation, fully funded Youth African Work Market for Youth program, KRC Uganda, helping over 360 young Africans, including refugees and youth with disability across employment and agriculture. With a global exposure through field assessment in the UK, South Africa, and Peru, Richard is passionate about building inclusive platform policies that empower African youth to drive sustainable transformation in the agro-food system. Mr. Richard, thank you for joining us in the studio today. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you, Peace. I'm really very fine, and thank you for the warm. When you are reading my profile, I was like, okay. And thank you for the receptions and for the invite as well. I look forward for this conversation. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. I must say to you that the work that you're doing through your policy advocacy and even the work that you're doing there in Uganda is so powerful. And I believe that you serve as like a beacon of hope and inspiration to the African youth to see that the viability within agriculture and to see that their voices make, matters and can bring about change. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
You are welcome.
Fantastic. So my very first question to you as we begin the conversation today is what does an inclusive agri-food policy framework look like? And why is youth inclusion so critical in its design and implementation?
Okay, thank you, Peace. I will really start with the last question on why it is more important and then explain
Okay.
how it should look like. Like you have already introduced me, I have wide experience in working with the young people, especially in the agri-food systems, but also working in the African continent. From experience, also from the statistics available, by 2030, Africa's population, 42% of the global population is going to be in Africa. But also, currently, we contribute to 1.5 billion people in Africa. By 2050, the projection is at around 2.4 billion people, and of which by 2030, we expect to have 350 million people living in urban areas across Africa. Of course, our biggest urban setup in terms of urban populations, we are looking at Dar es Salaam and Kinshasa, as well as Lagos and other areas. But also, we should be very mindful that agriculture contributes to 20% of most of the African GDP. If you look at the East African community, the 25% of our economies in all these African countries, in the East African community, 25% is contributed by the agriculture. But also, agriculture employs 80% of our population. What does that mean? Is that if this sector or the young people's involvement in the agri-food system is not enhanced, then we're likely to have a stagnant population. The question is, all our discussion is going to center, as the young population is increasing in Africa, what is it they can do? What is it they can do to earn a decent living? Not just a living, but a decent living. So if you look at the potential that agriculture and the agri-food system offers, then we already have the answer. The question is, how do we now play around the answer to make it practical? Then I answer your question on how should it look like. Because now I have given you the justification why we need to center on the agriculture and the agri-food system. Then the question is, how should it look like? When you're talking about the agri-food system, but also the policy framework, you are entirely looking at young people's participation. There are keywords that I'm going to be using here. If you want a youth-led agri-food policy systems for Africa, one, you must be deliberate. Deliberate on marginalized population, on disadvantaged population, on underrepresented population. And what is this? These are the youth, these are the women, these are the PWs, and these are the families. So any policy undertaken by any country or any regional bloc or at the African continent or any global platform, and it is not deliberate on those 4 pillars, then the question of inclusive policies will remain questionable. For Africa, where we are now, the question is, how have we mapped the marginalized communities? Let's say our young people. If you look the roles or the current employment status of the young people in Africa against other population, anyone should get worried. If you look at Singapore, China, and all these, people of our age mates are innovators. What are in Africa? What are we doing? So the question is, how are these policy incentives, how are these policy formulations very deliberate in ensuring that young people are at the center, not just as, this is also another question. We Africans, we also find that, okay, if you need Africa, you need the young people, get an attendance. As long as you see they are attended, then you can say youth participated. We are talking about meaningful and active participation of the young people. We are talking about youth-led. The question still remains, if we are talking about inclusive policies, besides addressing the marginalization, the disadvantaged, then it comes the question of youth-led, but also we are talking about access and equity. The question of, for over time, the young people, we have been disadvantaged by these other age groups. So how do we ensure the equity of the youth, equity for women, equity for refugees in the decision-making platforms? The question is, recently I was in a discussion and they asked, what are the loopholes we find in the policy platforms? Yes, we have the young people in these forums, but how is their participation? The question is, if you invite someone you've not built their capacity to participate, chances for them to participate is going to be so minimal. So what does that mean? That in enhancing the entire agri-food policy system, you need to be deliberate, you need to go into representation. Representation, we want the youth voice, we want the voice for the marginalized rural women, for the indigenous communities that we already have in our different countries, but also for the refugees, because we should know Africa, we believe in Ubuntu, brotherhood. That's why for our policies, especially for Uganda, where I come from, Uganda is the biggest refugee hosting country in Africa. So the question is, and I really appreciate our policy on refugees, it does not as refugees in this case, we support full integration of these people into our day-to-day life. What does that mean? We are creating a platform for them to realize their potential that can develop the continent. So if if I go back on your summarize on the question you asked, yes, we have all the justifications for Africa to get bothered,
Yeah.
Africa to realize that this is the time for the young people, because we really, really, if Uganda, where I come from, 73% of our population is below the age of 75, is below the age of 35. What does that mean? That we are almost we are the nation. So what is
Yeah.
our role in these policies? So for me, if we talk about an agri-food policy system, it has to address the issues of marginalization,
Yeah.
underrepresentation, the issues of disadvantaged groups, but also enhancing their led participation, enhancing access and equity, enhancing the youth voice and representation, but social
Mhm.
protection. Social
Yeah.
protection for women, social protection for the people living with a disability, and social protection for other marginalized groups must be integrated into the process.
Wow. 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 I like how comprehensive that answer to that question is. It was just very holistic, capturing everything that it needed to sort of capture. Thank you so much for sharing that. As you being a policymaker, what are some of like the major barriers you have observed that is sort of preventing young people from participating in agri-food policy making process today? From your own experience, what do you think that is?
Well, from where I come from, or from the platform that I've been part of, but also from our general experience as Africans, there are very many barriers that affect the young people's participation in the agri-food policies. But there are
Okay.
those that are cut crossing almost everywhere. I will give
Mm,
a number of examples. One is the limited participation in the decision-making spaces. Where are
yeah.
making processes are taking from? Most of our
Mm,
countries in parliament, it is in
yes.
these multi-stakeholder engagements like conferences. We
Yeah.
are looking at the multilateral agreements. All those are decision-making bodies. But the question
Yeah.
is, how many young people are there? Okay, the few who are there, what is their level of support to participate? So for me, the first issue is the spaces of decision-making. How
Yeah.
many are in those spaces? If you look our constitution back in Uganda, yes, the constitution is very clear, it can allow age groups to participate for elective positions, but
Okay.
we have space reserved for youth representation in parliament. But if you have
Okay.
a population of 73% below the age of 55, but then
Mm,
you have a parliament whose percentage, not even 20% is below the age of 35. So what does that mean? But also, let's look at the different NGO spaces. I come from the NGO
yeah.
spaces. Who are the leaders in those NGO spaces? Because they're also
Yeah.
in formulation arrangements. Yes, there is a saying, especially it is being used by the movement, the people living with a disability, that there is nothing for us without us. So if you
Yes.
that statement in all these disadvantaged groups, you will realize the biggest barrier is their limited participation in those spaces. The other one
Yes.
is access to information.
Mm,
Yes, we're currently in the digital era, and we must
yeah.
really appreciate platforms like this. I
Yeah.
know very many people who are going to listen to this podcast. There are very many people who are going to use it as a reference point, but there are very
Yeah.
many who are going to use it as a source of information. But
True.
how many have chance to this? So it's
Mm,
about access to information. It is not only about this digital platform, but also meaningful use of these platforms. If we look
yes.
at access to information, if we are there at social media, how many are accessing social media? What is the cost of accessing social media? But also
Mm,
the languages. Africa, we are multilinguistics. We are heterogeneous in nature. What does that
yes.
mean? We have very many local languages, and
Very true.
our interest of people to read and write is still wanting. So most of our policy frameworks, you will either find them in English, in French, in Spanish for a few countries, and maybe in Arabic. How many of our local indigenous communities understand these languages? What is the level of effort in translating these policy directions into local languages, but also to create awareness? So for issue of
Yes.
information, someone is like, there are a lot of good policies in different countries. I was
True.
reviewing the different framework Africa has. Recently, we had the comprehensive agricultural conference and summit in Kampala. But how many people knew about it? So the issue of access to information is very lacking. The other one is institutional support. We are talking about factors of production. Let's talk about land. Let's talk about finance. Let's talk about technology. These are now, don't forget about the traditional factors of technology. How
Yeah.
many young people have access to finance that can streamline their participation in the agri-food system, but also in the policy framework? Currently, I'm an advocate of mechanized agriculture in Africa. Traditionally, through all our tradition, we have relied on handholds. There is no
Yeah.
way handholds is going to transform Africa's agricultural system. We have
Yeah.
always relied on segmented, let's say, fragmentation land system. One
Yeah.
can transform Africa's agri-food systems, especially when you have an increasing population and more of
Yeah.
it of an urban population. So we need to revisit the factors of production. Who has access and control on the land? So I really believe that this is the right time for us to reflect on our policies. Can we design policies for young people to access land? But not
Yeah.
only to access, but also to control. Because
Yeah.
someone can have access, but you don't have control. So if you look
True.
at our agricultural produce, let's take an example of it. Most of the young people who are accessing land, they hire. You cannot plant coffee on a hired land because this is a permanent crop. Who's going to
Yeah.
lease that to 10, 15 years for you to get at least a breakthrough on a coffee plantation? So what does that mean? We must revisit our land policies to allow
Yeah.
these marginalized groups, the women, the PWDs, the refugees, and the youth, to have
Yeah.
access and control on land. If that is done, then we'll be able to streamline our policies. But that can be done through the policy arrangement. You streamline a policy that is going to support this into practice. So if you're
Yeah.
also the age and cultural biases, especially for Africans, there was a common saying that the youth are the leaders of tomorrow. And remember, every day there is hope for tomorrow, 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 tomorrow.
Yes.
If there
Yeah.
was people were ready to say no, it is not tomorrow, it is today. So these
Now.
culture and age biases has over time created barriers for the young people to participate. There are other countries where they say that women cannot sit on a table where decisions are taken, like we
True.
are in the country, and other
True.
cultural like that still persist. Question is, how do we do away with such discriminative cultural beliefs and attitudes so that we
Yeah.
set a platform that is flat for anyone to participate, for anyone to contribute, for anyone to take a decision in our policies? So there is an element which I really need to speak to is tokenism. Youth participation is being driven by tokenism. If you realize there are some of the recently the COP that happened, the young people's worries was more on tokenism. Most of the youth participation have been reduced on tokenism. People are asking how are you offering, what are the young people taking home, rather than what is their contribution, what is their interest besides the tokenism. Also, as young people, we have also reduced ourselves to that. We have created an assumption that we are in there to earn, not to influence something. Yes, earning is obvious, earning is
Yeah.
desirable in our lives. But as young people, we should be able to move beyond that, to look beyond the earning. What is it that we are contributing? But also,
Yeah.
the that create this platform, they should not create this platform under the disguise of tokenism. They should create them under the whole spirit that there is a contribution young people should and must make in ensuring we have policies that work for everyone in the agri-food.
Yes.
So, of course, the limited platforms, yes, we can really count. I was looking at the different platforms where young people can engage. Recently, there was the Kigali Declaration for the Youth on Agri-Food Systems. I realized their approach, how they created the different platforms for the young people to participate in the agri-food system and the climate actions. So I think we are short of platforms. Your platform, this is also a very good platform for policy enhancement. So, but how many and how many people are aware of this? So I think those are some key barriers, though others are more specific to a certain countries or to a certain age group, a certain disadvantaged group, but they almost cut all over the African continent.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much for just giving us so much insights into that, the things that have been preventing youth from fully participating in policies making today. But much more than the limitations, I would also want you to sort of talk about some of the ways that youth-led policies, infrastructure have been able to just sort of shape the agro-food system. So can you sort of walk us through how youth voices have shaped like major agri-food or green economy program that you have worked on, particularly maybe in Uganda or even across Africa?
Okay, thank you. I will really be very practical on two examples.
Okay.
But also before I go that, I will start with a statement. To
Okay.
influence anything, you must start from where you are.
Yes. Yes.
To influence anything, you must start from where you are.
True.
People who have made significant contribution to the world, they
Yes.
started from where they were. So
True.
this might be local actions, but if well documented and shared, they can create global impact. So
Yes.
is one, between 2000, at the peak of COVID-19, I was in Uganda, and I'm also currently in Uganda. There was a fundamental question of young people who had dropped out of school. There was a fundamental question on what next about the post-COVID recovery. So the question was, amongst our communities, what is it that we can do? From there, the idea of initiating a program, an agricultural market system programs that supports young people to participate in the market systems. You see, there was a traditional belief that young people, the only way to participate in agriculture is to hold a hoe. There are very many people participating in agriculture, but they have never even held a hoe. But they are making
Yes.
even good money than the people who are holding the hoe. If you look
True.
at the people who are benefiting from agriculture, ideally they don't hold the hoe.
No,
They
they
are
don't.
just other, they are at the waiting end of other value chains. So the
Yes.
question
Yes.
was, what are those value chains within our own region and setup where young people can participate? So we
Mm-hmm.
brought up an entire scope of the agricultural market systems. Okay,
Okay.
if you hold the hoe and you have land where to hold the hoe, go into direct production. If you're a border rider, for you a non-Nigerian, you call them Okada, go into the
Yeah.
transport, go into the transport sector. Can you
Yeah.
do as a market agent? Do you know there's someone connecting a buyer to a producer and is getting a good profit off that
Yeah.
deal? We
Yeah.
were looking at the entire agricultural market system in that sense, that young people can really get jobs and without necessarily holding the hoe. What if you be a market agent? Let's look at these agro suppliers. How do
Yes.
they reach to the final person in the community? So
Mm.
all those, they really help the young people. And it is through that that we also designed our agricultural market system, and we supported the young people, one, to go into agricultural production, two, to go
Mm.
into agents, three, to be
Wow.
CEOs for the different companies, to go into
Yeah.
transportation. So it was an entire value chain. And in that, when you
Yes.
see someone living with a disability, he cannot hold the hoe, but at least he
Mm.
can make a phone call and connect an agent. By the end of that sale, someone has already earned something when she's seated in the chair. So that
Yeah.
is how we designed our agricultural market system. I was managing that project when I was still at KRC Uganda. It is an NGO
Mm.
based that is supporting rural farmers to have a breakthrough into the different value chains. So those are some of the programs that we really participated in. But also, if you look at the other second program is the We Work Green and Decent Jobs for the Youth. This is an arrangement designed by the Enable. Enable is a Belgian entity that is supporting the African countries. It is in different countries. So they designed that project. But for us, we are looking at renewable energy. Why renewable energy? If you look the fuel, the wood consumption that people are using to cook, it's more of wood.
Yes.
So if you look at the different job value chain within the renewable energy, let's look at solar. Do you know the huge potential Africans we have with the energy? Because we lie across the equator. So we have chance for the direct sunlight day in. So what does that mean? We need to develop those alternative renewable energy systems than on relying on the. So it is through that we designed a project for the young people in Uganda to go into that. We are talking about climate action. If you look at the level of desertification, but also currently some of us who are coming from flooded area due to the different rivers and overflooding. The question was, what is the alternative? There is a plant called bamboo. Either call it a crop, other plant, other tree, but it is a plant. It's a grass actually. So bamboo, if you plant bamboo along the river sides, there are a lot of value chains within the bamboo. And if you see the money China is making from bamboo alone, it is very huge. So in Africa, we can still use bamboo not only for restoration of the river banks, but also for different value chain to get product out of it. So those are some of the engagements that we have done. But also from my role now, I currently support the World Food Forum to design the different agri-food systems. I will also explain later. But what I'm trying to show you is there are really practical examples from wherever you are that we can enhance to ensure young people participation. Remember, when designing this program, we are looking at an individual, a collection of individuals who were able to reach 36,000 young people. We were able to reach them. So what does that mean? That local action fast, and you can be able to create an impact overall.
Wow. Wow. That's really, really amazing. Really, really amazing. Like, I every time I have these sessions with experts like yourself, it's like a learning experience for me. I really didn't think much of the like there's a value chain even within bamboo. It wasn't something I had thought about. Typically in Africa, the most you could do with it is sometimes people tend to use it for constructions to just like lay a bit of things when they're trying to do construction. That for me, that was like okay, that was only the thing that could be done with it. But also the work you had done that pre or post COVID time, just helping people see what they could also do within the agricultural value chain. That was really quite impactful. So well done on that initiative. And thank you for walking us through that as well. So my next question to you at this time is, what do you think are some of like the roles like institution like the World Food Forum and UNEP plays in bridging the gap between local youth issues and then global policies agenda? Do you think that?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Good enough. You've mentioned entities where I'm part of. One, like you already read my bio or my profile, I'm a policy board member for the African Youth Policy Board of the World Food Forum, but also a policy fellow for the African Wildlife Foundation, the World Policy Fellowship. The role of all these is to coordinate policy engagements, purely policy. For the World Food Forum, it is on the agri-food systems. For the African Wildlife Foundation, it is for biodiversity conservation. But biodiversity conservation for what? It is for a livelihood. It is for coexistence. So what is their role? On this to enhance the young people's participation in this. One is to create platforms. Yes, I think we are short of platforms. So the more is to create these platforms, if you look at the World Food Forum, they have created a number of platforms. They have national chapters, they have the Youth Assembly, they have the World the Youth Policy Board, they have the innovators, they have the local action plan. So there is a number of platforms. They have the young scientist groups. So they have created enough platforms to enhance young people's participation. And whoever is listening to this podcast, I encourage you to go and search about the World Food Forum and see which of their platforms can you contribute to, which of their platforms you be part of, so that we can enhance these young people. But if you look at the African Wildlife Foundations, they are much more in creating capacity building for the young people. Currently, it's a training program for us to design policies that protect the biodiversity conservation. So for them, they are doing not only creating capacities, but they're also creating a platform for the young people to participate. As we speak now, there is a cohort that is under conservation and management that is into a residential training in Nairobi. So that is already a platform, but also they are building their capacities. So what are we trying to, what we need, one, these institutions, they need to create platforms. They need to build capacities. We are not yet there. I think one of the reasons why we have always been excluded from this platform is the lack of capacities and technical skills. So once we build our technical skills and capacities, it is not going to be global. We will really participate in it. But also, the other one is collaboration. How do we collaborate with the local entities? Because for them, they already have the global platforms. But there are many young people trying to get a breakthrough in Nigeria. There are a lot of young people trying to have very good innovation in Zambia, in Tanzania, in Kenya. Where are the collaborations? Where are the partnerships? Can we see this partnership creating meaningful impact to the local communities? So yes, they have a platform to create these partnerships in the African continent. So the other one would be amplifying the youth voice globally. Yes, we are trying to push for this and this, but we don't have yet a global forum to speak to. So can they be able to amplify what we are saying globally? Can they take it? Yeah. Can they take it to those platforms? Can they take it to those conferences? Can they take it to those summits? The young people, the African young people, this is what they are saying. So amplifying our voices on global platform is something that would really wish these multilateral organizational institutions can contribute in enhancing the young people's participation in the agri-food policies.
Wow, that's really huge, really huge. I like the part about amplification and also capacity building as well. Those are like key integral part for things like this. So my next question to you at this time is, how does integrating human rights principles improve the way we design food systems that works for both people and the planet?
Okay. I come from a human rights background. My
Great.
undergraduate degree is in human rights.
Oh,
So
good.
when I was making a shift into food system and food security, many people asked, Richard, you are a professional in human rights. What are you going to do in food system? What are you going to do in agriculture? You did your degree in human rights. And this was like, wow, that's why they need me. That's why I need to cross over. Over time, we must break the traditional assumption of agriculture. And my personal commitment into this policy arrangement is to create a new shift to see agriculture where there is respect for fundamental human rights. So the question of integrating human rights principle in everything is not questionable or under discussion. The question now before me is, how do human rights principles work in the agri-food sector or enhance into that? I will start with one. If you look at the principle of non-discrimination,
Yeah.
how do you explain that in the agri-food system? Who is owning land? Who is discriminated in land? Who is controlling the factors of production? So once you subject those questions to the principle of non-discrimination, then you're like, okay, so all along the young people also ought to own land. All along the young people ought to have access and control to land. We are talking about the second principle, gender sensitivity and integration of mainstreaming. That is our role. All the time the young people or the ladies, they participate in holding the whole. But once it comes to the market, where are they? So gender mainstreaming in the entire value chain. This is where the human rights principles come and support. Can
Yeah.
we have a gender lens even in the markets? Can we have a gender lens even in production? Can we have a gender lens even in value addition, in
Yes.
export, in negotiating contracts? So gender integration, the issue of non-biased, the issue of gender sensitivity, the people, not reduce women into production. Let's not reduce the role of women into production. It goes beyond that. So the human rights principle, let's talk about accountability. Look at the different budgets in agriculture sector. How is the level of accountability into that? The human
Yeah.
rights principle will task those people to be accountable to the people. So once you task everyone to be accountable, then you're enhancing service delivery to the people, agricultural and food system service delivery to the people. So human
Yeah.
rights principles, they are just there to reinforce the realization of service delivery to the common people. Let's talk about participation. Why are we even discussing all these and forget about participation? So the human rights principles or the human rights based approach into agriculture and food system will call for participation. Once you have the participation of each and everyone, then it means that you are bringing or designing policies that everyone will feel free and own. Let's talk about protection of exploitation. Look at child
Yeah.
labor. Look at the exploitation of these people who are into plantations by the
Yeah.
multilateral companies. So how do you
True.
protect them? How do you protect them? That's why the human rights principles come in to protect these people. They come in to protect smallholder farmers. Remember, most of the
Yes.
African is produced by the smallholder farmers. Who is there to
True.
attend to the contracts? We have contract farming. Who is supporting them to renegotiate this contract farming between the
Yeah.
company A and these smallholder farmers? So this
Yeah.
is human rights principles are not only a component, but they should be at the heart of any policy designed for agriculture and food system. And
Yeah.
personally, that's where my niche is. That's where my specialty is. Whenever I look at a policy, I try to look how does it address the fundamental rights and freedom of each and everyone. How does it respond to the human rights based programming approach to the agri-food system or the agricultural system? So literally you have to look at non-discrimination. If you find
Yeah.
the policy is designed, but it is going to disadvantage the PWDs, that is our role to say, look, your policy is silent. Your policy is blind on this. So if we're talking
Yeah.
about inclusion, we can, this is a we say your policy that does not factor in age group this and this or category this and this. If we talk about accountability, this is where we come in and say what are the accountability mechanism in this policy? How are we going to hold one accountable? So participation and all those. So the human rights based approach into agriculture and food system, I think it's high time we embrace it. We embrace it with an essence of helping smallholder farmers, with an essence
Yeah.
of helping marginalized groups to be able to have their interests, their rights, their freedoms protected in all the value chains of the agricultural and food systems. Yes.
Wow. 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 You just gave me like an amazing perspective today that even with human rights, we're able to ensure that every area is well covered. No area is left behind. Everything that needs to be factored in is then factored in the process of the policy creation. Fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Um, Even your bio says that you have led a lot of youth-led consultation across Africa. You've been part of a lot of youth-led consultation across Africa. uh, what are some of like the inspiring ideas and solutions that you have seen that young people have proposed, and they sort of impressed you and they've been worked on?
There are quite a number. I will look at the circular economy. If you look
Okay.
at the innovations around the circular economy, especially when we're talking about a circular economy, we're talking about waste management.
Yes,
If you
yes, with
look,
that.
there was even a suggestion that Africa, we do not need to produce more food than what we are currently producing. What we need is, can we maintain it, current
Mm,
population, but we reduce on the food waste.
stage, yeah,
Amount that we are sending on waste in our local markets, in our local restaurants, in our gardens is too huge that it can feed the entire population currently. So in the circular economy, I have seen young people innovate and push innovations that reduce on food waste, that turn into that waste into a productive alternative. We have seen
mm,
young people looking into Baicha. Baicha is turning other food waste into fertilizers. We have
yeah,
seen a program in Wundubujo. Wundubujo is a cocoa growing district in Uganda. People are turning cocoa husk to turn them into fertilizers. And that is something
wow,
that is supporting the agri-food system. If you also look at the level of disposal, African, especially if you look at the plastic waste,
yeah,
if let's say in the capital, Uganda, where I come from, maybe also where you are, if you look on either sides, chances are so high you will see a plastic disposal dumped
yeah,
anywhere. So
yeah,
what is the impact of that on the agri-food system? One, it degenerates our soil. It affects our
yeah,
climate. In that, restoring or picking and recycling of that is also helping. So those are some of the innovations that we have also seen. But also now that is to do with the agri-food, with the circular economy. When you talk
yeah,
about mechanized and agri-tech,
yeah,
there are a lot of platforms in Uganda and across Africa that I have been part of that enhance innovation in agri-tech, especially marketing. One of the biggest limitations that is affecting the agri-food system is the market systems. There is a
mm,
lot of fluctuations in our agro-produce. Remember, our efforts in value additions are one thing. So if you have a lot of wastes, but if you also have limited access of value addition, then the
yeah,
question comes, how are you going to do a swift marketing? We have seen young people design platforms that connect buyers to direct producers, where
mm,
things and they are sold immediately
yeah,
to the direct consumers. So in that way, we have really seen that the agri-tech, let's look at mechanized agriculture. I'm a
yeah,
strong advocate of mechanized and large-scale farming for Africa. So I was reading about a young man in Cameroon who is developing an app that connects tractors to the farmers. It is an app, like how you order an Uber, like come and take me here. A farmer
oh
is also
yeah,
a tractor. So the question is, there are very many innovations, but they are now at pilot. We need to map and scale up those innovations. We really
yeah,
need to scale up those education. I have been part of designing some of the climate smart agricultural system, especially
yeah,
irrigation. So, how are those irrigation systems? How are those irrigation supporting the young people? So, those and more are some of the platforms, are some of the innovations that we need to pilot, that we need to do more research, that we need to support, make sure they have a breakthrough, especially technological applications, value additions that can help to automate some of the food waste and others that we have.
yes, true, true. I think the why I'm also very keen about the whole circular economy thing because I believe that just like you mentioned, even if we choose not to produce much more as we're producing, but by just merely maximizing what we are producing, we shouldn't, would be able to meet most of our needs. And I like how circular economy is also helping to prefer solutions to that. And so my next question to you at this time is how can rural youths, especially in underserved region, become powerful agents of change on a national level or on the continental policy making process?
Well, here we need to be more responsive and inclusive, to have inclusive policies for the young people. We really
Yeah.
need now to start gearing onto that to make sure the young people are up there and engaging. But also, we need to look at the youth employment. How
Mm,
do we design or create this youth employment to ensure that the young people are already into these policies. The
Yes.
other one I would also think is maybe if we improved our accountability mechanisms.
Mm.
So what was the other question that you mentioned?
The other question is that how do we ensure that this youth in underserved region become powerful agents of change, particularly in the policy processes, whether on a national level or on a continental level?
Well, like I had already said that one, you need to start from where you are. You will not influence policies of Tanzania if you have failed to influence policies of Nigeria. You will not.
Yeah.
The
True.
most important point is start from where you are. Once you have done that, then that's
Mm.
where you start collaborations.
Yes.
Those of us who have had an advantage of global exposure, you will see how collaborations start. But you collaborate when you have something you're building on. So the
Very
most
true.
important thing for the young people is start from where you are. Build your spaces. It is through those spaces that you will open up other channels of collaborations and growth. But also
True.
is participation on the different platforms. Like still I said, you will not participate in the UN summit right from Kano, Nigeria, when you have never participated in a conference or a meeting in Kano. You will not. You will need a miracle for you to be there. If you see people who have gone into those platforms, you will see a coherent build of system, how they got into there. So
True.
the most important thing is, can we start with our local structures? Can we start
Yes.
with our local platforms? Can we engage into, can we create them? It is these local platforms that build these regional blocks, that build these global blocks. So the most important thing for me, my call is, even before you look at to go into the UN summit, to go into the EU sessions, the AU, sorry, what are you doing for Tanzania? What are you
Mm.
doing for Uganda? What are you
Yes.
doing for Nigeria? It is
Yes.
once you get that recognition, then your breakthrough in these other spaces becomes very much easier. So for me, that final question is about your role where you are, your contribution where you are. From there, people will create light about what peace is doing. You can imagine you started your podcast in Nigeria. Here I'm
Yes.
seeing Ugandans and other people all over. So, but had you started, I want a market in Uganda, you will not get it in Uganda before you market it in Nigeria.
True.
So that's how even these policy and platform engagements are. If you have not utilized maximum the platforms available to you in your local context, even if you go into a global platforms, you will not. So the most important thing is capitalize and utilize the local platforms that you have. It is from there you can expand, grow, network, and collaborate with the regional and global platforms.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that. There's always a need to start from where you are with what you have, even as you aspire to go into much more other spaces. Thank you for just emphasizing that. So my next question is: there's a common belief that policy making is a space that is reserved for an elite few, or for the older generation. And that's like, personally, I think that that's a limiting belief. However, from your own standpoint, how do you think that we can dismantle that mindset among young people and even decision makers?
Number one, it has to do with capacities. If you're good, you're good, regardless of how old you are. If you're good, you are good.
I agree.
So only be good when you've built your capacities. The old people are going to hold to that belief the moment you've not shown your goodness. So the first thing, improve our capacities as young people in terms of knowledge, in terms of
Mhm.
skills. Once you have
Yes.
skills and knowledge, these platforms become obvious. Someone will be there, oh, there is peace in Nigeria, we can engage her. There is Richard in Uganda. We can engage him because they already know you have the skills and you have the capacities.
True.
So until the African youth, we develop our skills and capacities, either by our governments, either by our other international organizations, either by ourselves, yearning for knowledge and skills is also a responsibility of your own, besides
Yes.
the state and others. So
True.
immediately you need to build your skills and competencies. Now, once you've done with that, then go and strengthen your local structures and community engagements. I have told you everything will start from where you are.
Yes.
Nobody who is in Abuja or in Lagos will know about you when he has not heard about you from your local region or your local where you are. So it
Yes.
means first actualize the local structures, the
Yeah.
available platforms. It is those platforms that keep opening others. I have been in platforms. There is no platform that I can say it just opened up when I was still in bed. No, it started, it was a built up, it's a chime, it's a connection. So, but it comes with one, like I've said, skills. Then from
Yeah.
skills into some young people, they really fear to participate in platforms, or they will go and keep quiet. So you have already missed an opportunity. The other option would be investing in rural voices. There is an assumption that it is only people who are in town who know it all. It's wrong.
True.
Can we listen to these voices?
Mm.
Can we listen? What are they saying? What are they offering? What is their suggestion? So the moment we listen to these rural voices, we also learn as policymakers. So for me, this is a task from those who believe in top bottom as opposed to bottom up approach in policy
Yeah.
making. The
Yeah.
moment you don't want to listen, then you will do bottom policies. But whoever is interested in listening, then they will do bottom up. So that
Yes.
is the gist that we really need to do, but also to streamline. The other one is to recognize and scale up youth innovations. Young people are doing tremendous innovations and work.
True. Very true.
We scale them up. So the moment we are very silent on that, then so for me, how to support or also to demystify that belief, one, it is also the onus is on us, but also
Yeah.
even those who are in there, let them recognize that okay, these people they also know something that I don't know. I keep telling people, even the people I go into it, I have never gone into a platform as an expert. There is something you don't know. Trust me.
Yes.
So anyone can teach you anything that you really didn't know. So for me, in any platform I go with an essence of learn. Can I learn and relearn? But also,
Yeah.
can I share what I know? Maybe there is someone who knows it, maybe in a different way, maybe a different innovation. And this is how people who have made innovations. They have made innovations based on other innovations. They just improve, and keep improving.
Yeah.
There are those that are completely new, but chances are so high. What we are currently doing, there is someone who did it. Maybe what we need to do is what is our value addition on that? What is our
Yes.
innovation in addition to that? So I think
Mm.
as our young and also as our leaders there, let us listen to the voices in the rural communities and the young people. But as young people, let us improve our competence and skills, but also participate in platforms. There is no way if you're good, you are good. They will need you.
Mm. True, true. I like how you talked about the value of building capacity and also just starting from where you are and start doing something from where you are and then scaling from there as well. So how can youth organization, from your own perspective, how do you think youth organizations or community-based network can create a sort of stronger, unified voice that policymakers cannot ignore? Because sometimes people feel like, oh, even when they try to lend their voices, it's been ignored. Whatever it is that they're saying is being ignored. But how do you think that can be sort of resolved?
One, collaboration. He says, I don't know why, I don't know whether it's in Uganda, but I think it's more in Africa. We want to go individualistic.
Yes, do things in silos. Yes, yes.
Yes, you can do it, but you do more if you
With
collaborate.
yes, yes, yes.
People should see collaboration not as competition.
I
And
agree.
all youth-led organizations, all youth-led innovation should aim at collaborations.
Mm,
If you see most of the innovations on the market, very few are a creation of one person. Very
true.
few. You will find maybe someone has more patent on many parts, but other patents are owned by other people. So it is collaboration. So as
Yeah.
youth-led organization or movement in Africa, how do we collaborate? How do we support each other? Not compete against each other. We can have this competition here and there, but the bottom of the line, if collaboration is what is going to ensure your breakthrough, then we must. So for me, that's really where I can really see this youth-led organization trying to go into collaborations, but also joining networks and platforms. There are a lot of
Yes.
platforms and organizations they don't know, even including myself. Sometimes every time you learn, oh, even there is this, even there is this. So learning is a process, and it is through networks. Can we build
Yes.
those networks? Can we get out of those silos? Can we stop getting satisfied on the little achievements that we have and aim higher? So for me,
Yeah.
that would be the biggest recommendations. The other one, of course, collaboration, I did not mention government. There is no way, especially for African leading agencies, youth-led organization, you will get a breakthrough without support of government.
True.
I understand we have very many reservations on most of our governments.
True.
Many of Africa, they will tell you they have reservations on their governments. But
True.
when it comes to collaborations, you need government. One,
True.
you will need a supportive policy. You will
Very
need a
true.
supportive financial incentives. You will need
Yes.
supportive and a conducive environment. So how do you
Yes.
get that? Is collaboration. Currently, if you see Kenya, if you see how many startups are breaking through in Kenya, there are very many. Why? Their government has built a lot of collaborations to that makes movement of goods and people across very easier. If you look currently, before I also take you back, 65% of the trade commodities in East African
Yes.
community are agro inputs, are agro products, these
Yes.
produces. They
Yes.
contribute 65% of the trade things that we trade amongst our African countries. So what does
Well,
that mean? That if these governments are in our collaboration with them, are you doing something that you realize will require a supportive government policy? If yes, this is where you start strike a collaboration, but also partnership, so that government can lay a policy for you to operate conducively. Yes, I appreciate you may have reservations, but bottom the line, we will need our government.
yeah, I like the fact that you acknowledge the fact that even though we have our reservations about our government, they still have a very pivotal role to play in the achievement of these things that we want to achieve. So thank you for also highlighting that for us. Um, for you, what's your vision for youth-led agri-food system in Africa? What do you foresee? What do you envision? Right? Say in the next 10 years from now, what do you envision will be happening?
One, I see a youth-led agri-tech movement. If a Nigerian has developed an app, as Africans, can we push that app? Can we support?
Mm, yes,
If you
yes,
see, currently, if you see most of the platforms we are relying on, none is, very few or even none is developed here in Africa. But we know there are young people who are not seated. They are developing apps. How do we support African-led applications and
mm,
platforms? For me, in the next 10 years, that should be the discussion. Where are the agri-tech innovations that we can take up?
Yes.
Where are the value additions? Which company that is Africa owned, that is adding value, let's say to cocoa,
Mm.
we supply that company? Of course, this will still come with our government policies. When we're talking about intergovernmental trades and all these, this is where the focus should be. Because we are, by the way, we are going to have a biggest asset, population. Populations
Yes.
come with the market.
Yes, it
So
is. Yes.
the global market is going to be in Africa. So before we import something from China or anywhere, is there a substitute in Africa? Before we export something to go into their factory, can it be exported to another factory, maybe in Egypt, maybe in Algeria, maybe in South Africa? Can we supply it to them? So that our African trade balance is very supportive. So if we are really looking at also decision making, how independent can we be in the next 10 years
Mm.
in our decision making? You see, if there is a lesson that we learned during COVID time, at a time when factories were manufacturing vaccines, that vaccine war, that should have been a wake-up call to many of us Africans. So where are we in, let us assume in the next pandemic, how prepared are we as a continent? So that's where our agri-food systems and policies, they need to be revisited. Like it or not, these are going to be raw materials for pharmaceuticals.
True.
So how are we supporting our agri-food system for pharmaceutical breakthrough? Let's say a factory, a pharmaceutical is in Benin, a factory it's not set up, but a
Yeah.
product is used in Tanzania or Uganda. And maybe another factory is in India or it is in the US. Why should we rush to supply them before we supply Benin? For me, that's where the decision making and the reflection in the next 10 years should be. It's good that the young population is taking up leadership position. It's good. But if we also don't capitalize on that to take independent decisions, then we will also lose it. So for me, the projection is we should create democracies, but also leadership that is youth-led. We should also ensure youth access with equal tools and opportunities that are incentivized by the agri-tech innovations to
Yeah.
enhance participation, to enhance sharing and learning. Where is the academia? What is their role? If you're seeing most of the universities from the global north, they are striking partnership with African institutions. Why?
Yeah.
It's because they know the next big thing is in Africa. But where are the collaboration of African-based academic institutions? We are seeing it is there between, I would say, Makerere and Oxford, Makerere and Cambridge. They are there. Where is it between Makerere and the university in Nigeria and the
Yeah.
South Africa? University of Nairobi in Kenya. Where is it? So for me, if we are to project a picture in the next 10, 5, 15 years, that's where our focus should be at. So that we know we are going to design policies that are really going to support each and everybody who will be living or working or collaborating within the African continent.
I strongly agree with you. I think that uh, my last guest, he sort of highlighted and touched a bit about this, that he looks forward to a time where Africans are rising to build solutions for Africa. Just building our own solutions, our homegrown solutions for ourselves. And that's a good envisioning. And I hope that every person on this call that is an innovator, an agribusiness person, sees this as a call to action. you know. Uh, um, my other question to you at this time is around, what advice would you give to like a young person that is passionate about, the food system, but they are quite unsure how to like either break into policy or advocacy work or any other value chain within the agricultural sector. What would be your advice to such a young person today?
I think my advice will still be the same. Start from where you are.
Well, Richard, this is the thing, yeah? Richard, this is the thing. You also know that there are a lot of young Africans that still believe that agriculture is a path to penury. Agriculture, there's so much drudgery within it. Agriculture it's a profession that if I go into, I might not necessarily make so much out of myself. And so there's still that limiting belief, there's still that mindset to it.
I think, like I had earlier said, there is an assumption that agriculture means holding the whole.
Yes.
We should break that mentality. There are very many people seated in office, and their sole official or the every day they work on is agriculture. So it goes beyond holding the whole. You know that mentality of it is attached with holding the whole. But we still
Yeah.
need, if we don't go into mechanized agriculture, we will still hold the whole. So there is no the only shortcut of that, avoid the whole, go into mechanized agriculture. If you don't, you will still hold it. We will still need people who will hold the whole. So the advice to the young people, can we look at the different value chains within the agri-food system and center on one? There are people who are saying they are doing marketing. Do marketing on agri-food systems. If you believe you're a good marketer, you have very many agro-produce. Strike a business deal for one of them, and you'll be a billionaire because the resources are there. If you say you're a very good legislator or you're a good student of law, design laws and policies that support agriculture. If you want to be a farmer like me, I'm going to have access to land, produce something and in large quantity. For any breakthrough in agriculture, the question of quality and quantity is going to be key.
Yes.
So bottom of the line for anyone who wants to engage in the agri-food, you see the agri-food sector is for everyone, even for doctors, even for engineers. Be an agricultural engineer. You're already into the agri-food system. So for me, it's about where you are and what you can. Whatever you're doing, see what is your role in the agri-food system. That's what personally I did. I was into the human rights and governance. The question was governance for what? Human rights for what? Governance for food system. Governance, agricultural governance. That's where my niche is. You may not call me for a political discussion on how to win an election. It may not be of help. But if you called me to discuss about agriculture, it will be of help. So I'm a governance expert in the agri-food system, not
Yeah.
in the civil spaces, not in the political spaces. So everyone, wherever you are, there is a role that you can still do in the agri-food system. You are a communicator, communicate about food systems.
Yes.
You don't need to do communication that there is a demonstration here. No, communicate about a good farmer in your village. Communicate about an innovation in agriculture. You're doing your
Yeah.
communication, but you're into the agri-food system. So
Hmm.
for me, like I have earlier insisted, start from where you are with what you have and make your contribution known from there. These global platforms are very easier to break through if you have laid a very good foundation for yourself at home.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Richard. It's been quite an interesting conversation with you this morning. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your expertise with us on the platform. And thank you everyone for joining the session live today. Uh, the chat has just been buzzing, and a couple of persons, just agreeing to the things that you highlighted on and that you shared with us on the call today. Thank you so much, Mr. Richard. It's been an amazing time with you on the session today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Pes. I also appreciate for the invite, and I look forward for more. Thank you.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. All right, guys. Thank you so much.